Imagine a winter night in Vienna. The lights are warm, the streets are clean, and the coffee costs a fortune, but nobody seems to mind. Austria is one of the richest countries on earth, not flashy rich like Silicon Valley, not oil rich like the Gulf states, and not dominated by finance like London. It's just quietly rich. GDP per capita is over $55,000. Wages are high, social safety nets are strong, and healthcare is universal. Pensions are generous, unemployment is low, and the banks are stable. And yet, Austria has no massive tech giants, no trillion-dollar companies, no vast natural resources, and no empire left to exploit. So how did this small landlocked country of 9 million people become so wealthy? The answer isn't glamorous. It's structural, it's boring, it's patient, and it's a little bit ironic because Austria got rich by becoming something most countries are terrified to be: ordinary. Right now this matters because across Europe, governments are struggling with debt, aging populations, and stagnant growth. Germany is slowing down, Italy is strained, and France is protesting something as usual. Meanwhile, Austria just keeps working. No headlines, no drama. Let's break it down. After World War II, Austria was a mess. Bombed, occupied, and divided into zones controlled by the Allies and the Soviet Union. Vienna itself was split just like Berlin. It could have gone east or it could have gone west. Instead, in 1955, Austria declared permanent neutrality, no NATO, no Warsaw Pact, no military blocs, just business. That neutrality turned out to be economic gold. During the Cold War, Austria became the bridge between Western and Eastern Europe. Capitalism on one side, communism on the other. Vienna became a quiet meeting point. Trade flowed through, diplomats met there, and banks settled transactions. When the Iron Curtain fell in 1989, Austria was perfectly positioned. Suddenly, the markets of Hungary, Czechia, Slovakia, and beyond were opening up, and Austrian companies were first in line. Austrian banks expanded aggressively into Eastern Europe in the 1990s and early 2000s. They bought local banks, financed mortgages, and funded infrastructure. They captured market share before Western Europe even fully paid attention. By the mid-2000s, the exposure of Austrian banks in Central and Eastern Europe was equal to a massive percentage of Austria's entire GDP. Was it risky? Yes. Was it profitable? Very. While other countries chased tech bubbles, Austria quietly built a financial empire eastward. But banking alone doesn't explain it. Austria's real secret sits in its economic structure. It runs on something called the social partnership model. Employers, unions, and the government coordinate wages and policy together. Not in public shouting matches, not on Twitter, but in negotiated rooms. Wage increases are discussed centrally, industry by industry. The goal is stability, the result: few strikes, predictable labor costs, and long-term planning. It sounds dull, but it works. Austria also specializes in mid-sized industrial companies. Not giants, not startups chasing venture capital. These are often family-owned firms that build precision machinery, high-end manufacturing equipment, specialized steel products, and railway components. You've probably never heard of them, but they dominate niche markets. Austria doesn't try to be everything. It tries to be essential in specific corners of global supply chains. That focus protects it. When one sector slows, others hold steady. And then there's energy. Unlike many European countries, Austria invested heavily in hydroelectric power. Roughly 60% of its electricity comes from renewables, mostly hydro, that reduces dependency, lowers volatility, and keeps industry competitive. It's not dramatic, it's strategic. Tourism plays a role too, but not in the way you might think. Yes, the Alps bring skiers and Vienna brings culture, but tourism is just one part of a diversified economy. It supplements rather than dominates. Now here's where the math gets a little uncomfortable. Austria's population is aging, and it's aging fast. Pensions are generous, healthcare is expensive, and public spending is high. In fact, government spending sits around half of the country's GDP. That sounds unsustainable. And yet, Austria's debt levels remain manageable compared to many of its peers. Why? Because growth has been steady, not explosive, just steady. From the 1990s through the 2010s, Austria benefited from European Union integration, Eurozone stability, and that expansion eastward. When it joined the EU in 1995, trade intensified, supply chains deepened, and capital moved freely. Austrian firms could export into a massive market without friction. And here's the quiet advantage. Austria adopted the euro. No currency risk inside the eurozone, lower borrowing costs and stability for exporters. The euro sometimes frustrates larger economies. For Austria, it simply reduced volatility, but it wasn't all smooth sailing. During the 2008 financial crisis, Austria's banks were heavily exposed to Eastern Europe. If those economies had collapsed, Austrian balance sheets would have cracked. There were tense moments, quiet bailouts, and careful coordination. But Austria survived. Then came the Eurozone debt crisis, then COVID, and then the energy shock after Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Each time, Austria felt the pressure. Inflation spiked and growth slowed. But the underlying structure held because the system isn't built for speed. It's built for resilience. And here's the irony. Austria's wealth doesn't come from innovation hype. It comes from institutional trust, low corruption, efficient bureaucracy, reliable courts, and predictable regulation. Those things don't trend on social media, but they compound over time. Foreign companies invest because contracts are enforced, workers train. Through a strong apprenticeship system that feeds skilled labor directly into industry. Students split their time between school and companies, so their skills match market needs. This keeps unemployment relatively low and wages, while not at American tech executive levels, are solid and broadly distributed. Austria avoided extreme inequality that creates social cohesion, which reduces political chaos, which attracts investment, which supports growth. It's a feedback loop, but there's a tension building beneath. The surface, Austria's banking expansion into Eastern Europe once looked like genius timing. Now those markets are maturing, growth is slower, and competition is higher. Energy used to flow cheaply from Russia. That era is over. Austria must adjust. Demographics are turning heavier, with fewer workers supporting more retirees, and global manufacturing faces pressure from Asia and automation. Austria's model relies on high-skill industrial exports. If global demand weakens, that model comes under strain. So what exactly made Austria rich? It leveraged its geography during the Cold War. It expanded aggressively after 1989. It integrated deeply into the European Union. It built industrial specialization instead of chasing trends. It institutionalized cooperation instead of conflict. It invested in renewable energy early, and it maintained fiscal discipline most of the time. Crucially, it avoided dramatic mistakes. No housing bubble on the scale of Spain. No sovereign debt spiral like Greece. No deindustrialization collapse like parts of the UK. Austria's success is less about doing something brilliant and more about not doing something catastrophic that might sound underwhelming. But over 70 years, avoiding catastrophe is a powerful strategy. Look at the numbers. Since the post-war era, Austria transformed from a war-torn occupied territory into one of Europe's top-income economies. Life expectancy is high, infrastructure is modern, public transport is efficient, and Vienna is frequently ranked among the world's most livable cities. That didn't happen through a single reform. It happened through alignment, banks financing expansion, industries focusing on precision, labor negotiating instead of striking, and government balancing welfare with competitiveness. It's not glamorous capitalism. It's coordinated capitalism. And here's the bigger implication. In a world obsessed with disruption, Austria demonstrates the power of stability. But stability has a hidden cost. It can breed complacency. If innovation slows, if demographics worsen faster than expected, if geopolitical tensions fracture European trade, if public spending outpaces growth, the math changes. Right now, Austria is still wealthy, still stable, and still quietly effective. But the forces that built its prosperity, EU integration, Eastern expansion, energy flows, and demographic balance are all shifting. The question isn't how Austria got rich. That part is clear. The real question is whether a system designed for stability can adapt to a world that rewards speed. Because being ordinary worked astonishingly well. The next few decades will test whether ordinary is still enough. Thanks for watching.